Welcome to the Small but Mighty Marketing Podcast. I've Josh Becerra here, president of Augurian, and myself, Shinhee Sun, director of growth. And we're going to be talking about the things that we've learned over almost 10 years of Augurian,
Yeah,
of just what we've learned about the agency client relationship and the things that we saw were broken about the whole process and what we've learned about that and how we've tried to improve on that within our own process. So
yeah.
that's what we're going to dig in today. And this is episode 7. So I'm really excited. Getting close to episode 10.
Let's
Very
go.
close. And
Yeah.
then also, we're going to have some special guests here pretty soon as
hmm
well. So by the time this goes live, you should probably wait also as well to tune into the next episodes because we have some fantastic guests. So
Yeah. Should
we're
be
going to
fun.
be chatting about all the things that we have experienced, and some things have been very bad.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things that I've heard a lot about clients I guess frustrations was really around sometimes like they feel like there's a lack of attention
hmm
that they're starting to notice. So one of the most common things I have seen is maybe the relationship starts really strong
Right.
and all of a sudden it starts to wane
Yeah.
and you hear less and less. You're starting to see different people on the account.
Sure.
Why don't you share a little bit about what
Yeah.
you've been seeing?
Well, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
the like waning attention, there's the different people on the accounts, there's a lot of different things. Um I think yeah, because we've been doing this a while, it's pretty clear to us that like when people are coming and asking us to, take over their accounts, it's because they're like kind of in a sucky position with
Mm,
their current agency. And so, like, we work really hard to not have a agency that makes our clients feel like it's a sucky relationship,
yeah.
right? I would say that a lot of this stuff is centered around a big piece of work that we've done.
Mm,
It's called our program workbook,
okay.
right? And so what that is it's kind of a shared source of truth that we have with our clients,
Mm,
where everything is very clearly documented around what are the goals, like the higher arching goals, then what are some of the like prioritized tasks that we've agreed on and aligned on
mm,
that like roll up to those goals, and then gets into like scorecards and tracking and understanding like, okay, what of all the prioritized tasks we've decided to work on, which are we currently working on, are we on or off track on that, and who in the end is accountable. And so
mm,
um that's a big pillar to how we solve for kind of making sure that the client agency relationship doesn't suck. Another pillar is kind of our meeting structure and
mm,
how we do that.
yeah.
So I mean, I can get into that as
Yeah.
well, but I feel like the way that you kind of tackle this sense that like there's waning attention
Mm,
is by being very clear and transparent about what is it that you're working on, how is that roll up to goals, and making sure that that's agreed upon, so that
mm,
on the client side that you can see like, oh, okay, Josh is this is what Josh is tackling in the next month's time, right? And then we have a lot of other tools around our meeting structure, around our pre-meeting insights that help then the client feel like they understand the execution side of what we're doing. Because a lot of times, what we've heard is people show up and say like, I don't know what my current agency is actually working on,
yeah.
and like that is a agency client relationship that sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's also coming firsthand experience, from myself when I've been on the agency side, and very early on they would just like, well, what did you do last week?
Yeah,
What did you do this month?
right.
And there's a couple of different reasons, right? One, they need to create a recap for their, when they need to report on things.
Yep.
And then there's also coming from a place of I feel like I need more attention on my account. I'm
hmm
not seeing the results I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Like, you need to tell me what's going on. And
Right.
so yeah, and so having those program workbooks really keeps everyone accountable.
Sure.
Whether or not, you as a client look at it, it does keep the agency is accountable because it's documented.
Yep.
You can clearly see if you're making progress on a project that you're working on. And I have also seen the benefits of, because of that level of accountability, it encourages more communication,
Yeah.
because if you see something looming or the deadline's coming up, it's going to encourage you to get the deliverable or the assets you need from the other team in order to
Right.
hit your goals. Yeah, I
There's
mean,
no there you know there's another piece, I think, that another pillar that I'm thinking about right
yeah,
now that I think is super important. Like when we started Agreeing, we made a decision not to have account managers.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so what does that mean? Like there's agencies that will have kind of someone who's in charge of the relationship with the in-house team, and they kind of sit in the middle between the people who are actually doing the execution
Mm,
and the in-house team. And that account manager role, we have found, by eliminating it, what we have is in-house teams working directly with the experts, the people who are doing the execution. And what that creates is, like, if I'm telling you I'm going to do this for you,
mm,
right? And there's no filter, there's nobody in between, then, you know, there's a high degree of accountability.
mm.
So when Josh says, I'm in charge of these 3 tasks during this 2-week sprint, and then I have to show my face to you again and say, did I get what I said I was going to get done? Yes or no. And there's no person in between that's kind of managing the relationship or kind of making excuses or kind of fluffing timelines. I feel like the fact that we don't have account managers
Yeah.
actually creates a higher degree of accountability
Mm,
and transparency when in-house teams ask questions. The people who are in the room are answering those
right.
questions, and so that's another kind of pillar to this. So you have kind of these program workbooks, shared source of truth. You have the meeting structure. You have the fact that you're working directly with experts as an extension of your team without kind of that layer of account
Hmm.
management. So anyway, yeah,
I mean, I've experienced on, both sides of having account managers and then also not having account
yeah,
managers. And when I joined Augurian, it was the opposite, right? I had account managers before
yep,
that you would have to meet with and make sure everyone's on the same page. And then the account manager usually will translate all this information he or she is getting from all of the different channel teams. And that person is now talking to the client.
right,
And there's definitely pros and cons to that from the client side, because now you have one person to speak with.
yep,
But on the downsides that I have seen is that it puts a lot of emphasis, um, or I guess there's a lot riding on the account manager understanding enough of the different channels to be able to not only say the right things,
yeah,
but also not set unrealistic expectations that even the channel teams, are would reject, and
right,
and because it's not correct or the timelines aren't right.
yeah,
And so there was a lot of that at least I had experienced, and coming into it was to Gurion was refreshing because you get it straight from the source.
right,
And I also think the long-term benefits of a Gurion staying on this path is that it encouraged everyone on the team to improve the communication,
yeah,
like their skills of
yep,
communicating what this means.
totally,
Because that is what an account manager is really doing, is translating it so it makes sense to you. But because we don't have that, we set a level of standard for everyone to be able to translate what they're looking at on the
yeah,
day to day and make it make sense to you.
right,
And so I've really appreciated not having account managers, at least when I was on the SEO side.
yeah,
But there's definitely pros and cons, and I talk about this in my LinkedIn lives that I've been running,
mm-hmm,
about not getting burned choosing a digital marketing agency. And it really does come down to you. Some people do prefer having one single person,
sure,
not needing to chat with the SEO person or the paid media or analytics. But there are those that do appreciate that. And so it is important
yeah,
as you're vetting different agencies, like what do you actually prefer
Right.
in your style?
Right. Yeah. And I would just say that, the fact that we don't have account managers could be a turnoff for some
Yeah.
people. The fact that we do is something that is like highly beneficial,
Hmm.
because like the pace at which you can have conversations and
Yeah.
get to the bottom of things and make changes on things is just different when you
Mm.
just aren't playing telephone.
Yeah.
And it also eliminates a lot of the like, well, this is what I heard you say, and so then that like hearsay can happen between the account manager and the client, or it can happen between the account manager and the channel teams,
Mm.
and so that's just a tricky wicket, and by eliminating it, I think our clients benefit, and they like it.
So what, I'm thinking, it's been, yeah, we've been around for 8, 9 years. And what's been the most frustrating to you in our industry when you think about this agency client relationship?
um I do think it is around like transparency.
Mm.
For me, like, and that comes in a lot of different forms, but like I've seen things where agents people will show up and they won't even own their own accounts, right? And so then agencies are kind of holding
Yeah.
them hostage or saying like, yeah, you can go to work with Augurian, but we're not going to give you access to like the data that you've been paying for these clicks. Like, and so like that piece is like super frustrating, and I think it's not prevalent, but it hurts the industry, when there's people operating like that out there. There's a lot of people will show up, especially on like the SEO side, where it's like wizardry or like something that's so like mystical that these SEOs are doing. And I feel like we've kind of demystified that. We really do like thorough audits. We help our clients understand like here are the the things that need to be fixed and why,
Mm.
and how we would prioritize those things and why. And so by kind of demystifying what we're seeing, it not only helps like educate our clients,
Mm.
and help their learning curve around SEO, but it also helps us like be transparent and stay on track and get aligned. And so that we can say like, these are the things that are getting done. When people show up and they say, I don't know what my agency's doing. All we get are these reports on a monthly basis. We don't have control of our ad accounts. Like all this layers into kind of like the transparency
Yeah.
piece. And so, yeah, I think like clarity and accountability like equals confidence,
Mm.
and so we need to like continue to push our industry to be more transparent, to have the best interest
Mm.
of our in-house teams in mind.
Yeah, that would be, I feel like, a great tip for, companies. If you don't know if you have access to your analytics, your ad accounts, your web hosting, all of those things,
Yeah.
you should ask and
Yeah.
see what the reactions are like. Because whenever we hear that, we cringe a lot because of how much time gets wasted and resources get wasted when you don't have access to that.
Yeah.
If you don't have access to analytics account, you've got to create a new one, and
Yeah.
the data is fresh, it's new. You can't use historical data, so now you're, I don't want to say you're going in blind, but it really makes analysis tough. It makes benchmark tough, like
Yep.
comparing how you're doing. Yeah, so there's a lot of downstream effects. Same thing with like web hosting when you're doing migrations, or I remember certain aspects of some client sites were controlled by a different agency, and so they had to constantly ask them, follow up with them,
Yeah.
so that we can make the basic changes. And so I would even say in our industry, I mean, it's always been changing and evolving, but the speed of which you need to act has gotten higher
Yeah.
because of AI, because of all this technology that allows you to act faster.
For
So
sure.
this is, if you do anything from this, I would say make sure you have access to those, and if you don't, ask for that and see how they react to that, because that is a telling sign.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's another thing that I hear all the time when new prospective clients show up, and they may not even be like totally unhappy with their agency, but they're
Mm,
like on their third, analyst in the last 6 months or
yeah,
something. And they just feel like, man, I spend meeting after meeting re explaining what our business is, what we're trying to accomplish, what our KPIs are.
yeah.
And then a new person comes in and I have to re explain all that over and over again. And I think people get tired of that. And so I think one of the things we work very hard at Augurian is to, is employee retention.
Mm,
Like, how is it that we can make sure that our employees are feeling good about the work here?
yeah,
They feel like they have a good balance of work life. They're challenged and growing in their kind of craft and expertise. So I also think that that's another big trigger for people to be out looking for a new agency is
yeah.
like, wow, we've had like turnover a lot on our team, and I don't know what's going on. And from an in-house perspective, they're just like, why do I need to be thinking about the problems of my agency,
Yeah.
right? Those aren't my problems. I need to be focused on my goals and KPIs internally here. And when you find yourself trying to manage the relationship with the agency because every 3 to 6 months you have someone new on the account, like that's just
Mm,
that should also be a little bit of a flag for people,
yeah.
because it isn't the responsibility of the client or the in-house teams to be taking on the problems of the agency.
Yeah. And turnover is expected at
It
any
it
company.
exists. Yep.
And but what I would emphasize is how strong of a process does the agency have to transfer knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not you can't avoid someone leaving.
Yeah, of course.
Now there are situations where if you're getting two different people coming in and out every year, I mean that's a big problem.
Yep.
But a healthy amount, I mean, you know, once every couple years or so,
Yeah.
or there is an acceptable
It
amount, I would say.
exists. Yeah. And it
But
exists at Agrarian
yeah,
too.
it does, and so that is why we put so much effort into storing all the knowledge, historical knowledge that
Mm-hmm.
we have of each person we work with,
Yep.
what you value, the things, the types of strategies that you emphasize, what kind of company are you, what's your business model.
Yep.
All of this gets stored in documents so that when we do need to transfer, it's as seamless as it
Yeah.
can be.
Yeah, the two principal documents you're talking about again is this program workbook,
Yeah.
which is great because then you can see exactly what people have been working on, what the roadmap looks like, what the prioritized tasks are, where we're at, what's
Mm,
on track, off track. So like that is a great kind of um, asset for
yeah.
when any sort of transition happens. The other thing that the other kind of documentation that I think has been super valuable for us in transitions, when we do have a new team member onboarding onto a client, are the what we call our pre-meeting insights.
Mm,
So prior to any meeting, like monthly meeting with Agrarian, our teams are required to fill out pre-meeting insights that are sent to the client teams before we have the meeting. There's kind of two reasons for this. The first is what we're talking about, which is if we're documenting like the insights and what we're seeing in the data on a monthly basis, then if anybody needs to onboard onto that client, they can go and look at the pre-meeting insights from the last 3, 4, 6 months, read through them, and understand what the prior team was looking at, what they were thinking about, where their recommendations were going,
mm,
right? So we don't lose any of that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is by delivering these before the meeting, you're not sitting in meetings reviewing reports and talking about insights. Everybody has kind of read through that before getting to the meeting. So now that we're together,
yeah.
we can take that valuable time and we can actually talk about, okay, we all read the insights, there's some recommendations in there, let's talk about those recommendations. What do you think? The client can come up. We have this meeting structure that will allow clients to also bring stuff up like, hey, we need to pivot here, or we have this new product launch that we really need to focus on. So, um, the pre-meeting insights and the program workbook just allow us to have, like you're saying, that documentation. So if and when we do have a transition
Yeah.
from one account, well, somebody on an account to another, it's all there.
Yeah, and something that doesn't also probably get asked during the agency selection process is, how do you address when someone's on vacation? Like if
Sure.
your team lead is on vacation, and I mean we can't show you the documents, but man, there's a lot that goes in
Yeah.
prior to a team member going off for a week or two.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this downloading of information that happens with whoever can take over the account for in temporarily, but then the pre-meeting insights, it's all stored on the same
Yeah.
document, so they go read through it, understand the sentiment, how things are going, the rocks that we have, which is our projects,
Sure.
the current process or current priorities, and then you've got all the other documents that they can use,
Yeah.
and then they also just share all the other things that aren't in the document. So that is I believe, a strong sign of one, communication internally to make sure that there's a smooth, almost seamless experience, even if the person leading your account isn't available.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes into it, but this goes into one of those other, I feel like, irritations that I've seen is the inconsistency of communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we jump to that, you reminded me of one other thing
Yeah.
with what you were saying, and I just want to remember. So, in the early days of Augurian, we had people who were, subject matter experts working directly with clients, but each of them had kind of their own processes
Yeah.
that they were running, right? And we realized, okay, we need to standardize processes, and we've done a lot of that. We have like standard operating procedures and understandings on how we actually do things. So that was one thing. And then the second thing is we went away from having just like this person really being the primary on an account to a squad structure.
Mm.
So at Augurian, we now use this squad structure where we have a manager and a senior analyst and an analyst. So there's like at least two, if not three people who are aware of what's happening with every single client with oversight from like our directors. And so, yeah, when somebody goes on their honeymoon for 2 weeks, people can step in. They already have been in some of the calls. The client knows their faces, has seen them.
Mm.
They're participating from a squad perspective. And so there's different roles. Obviously, the manager plays a different role than an analyst on a squad and all that. But if an analyst goes away for a week, the manager has full context, can step in, knows how to do the work and get going. And so I do also think that the idea of like this squad structure has been super helpful when people are out for, maternity, paternity leave, honeymoons, a long vacation, right? Balance work life.
Yeah. Well, what are some other things that you've, like, common frustrations you've seen? You're like, I cannot believe that's what you were going through.
Um, so another one that, I mean, I don't know if it's common, but comes to mind
Yeah.
is like, and we've heard this when talking with our existing clients is they like working with a green because they don't feel like we're nickel and diming them on every single thing. And I think this is like especially on the paid media side, this can be kind of a contentious, frothy kind of a argument, right? The way that we solve for that is we use a percentage of ad spend. Um, and so what that means is as like we start seeing wins and growing accounts, right? And ad spend, there's a that percentage just kicks in. So we don't need to be talking about, okay, well, with this is changing the scope. We're managing a lot more of campaigns. We're managing a lot more platforms. It's all just kind of understood and wrapped into this percentage of ad spend. The reason why I say it's kind of a frothy conversation is because there are those out there who believe that, the percentage of ad spend is basically a way for the like it incentivizes the agency to just try to get you to spend more money,
Yeah.
which, I mean, at the very like lowest level, this is this is a truth, right? Like, client spends more money, agency makes more money. That is true. But I think where it kind of gets decoupled from that is when we're only really focusing on like the KPIs and the goal, like where our focus is on the KPIs and the goals. That's when we at Augurian ask our clients to spend more. It's like,
Mm.
we're proving that we can hit this ROAS goal.
Mm.
We believe that this is how big that opportunity is. You should spend more here, and we shouldn't see a change in the ROAS, right? We
Mm.
should continue to see the same ROAS. And so clients want to grow. Like, they want us to like show them that
Yeah.
that is in fact where they can grow. And so there's agencies who don't do the percentage of ad spend, and then they find themselves in conversations more frequently about, well, okay, but we're growing, this is changing, the scope has changed,
Mm.
we're going to need to add some more dollars here. And we've just made the decision to like not have to have that conversation by having a pre-established percentage of ad spend. So this idea of like, man, I don't feel nickel and dimed by Augurian,
Yeah.
because it's, we're not trying to like do anything out of the ordinary, upsell crazy projects and things like that. It's all like contemplated in our fees. Um, I feel like that's been a good thing for both us and our clients.
Yeah. That's a good point, and it really depends on the incentives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you as a marketing leader on the in-house side, it just depends on your style. And I'm going to talk about this in my LinkedIn live as well, but yeah, that's a fair point. And really, at the base layer, if the agency can't deliver results, it doesn't even matter if you're doing a fixed management fee or a percent of ad spend.
Right.
But if you find a great quality partner, I mean, it can work both ways. And then it
Yeah.
really comes down to what you think will motivate your team, which may include an agency in the long run. And
Yeah.
so that could be the management fee, or it could be percent
Yep.
of ad spend.
For sure.
Yeah.
Another one of those things that pops up sometimes is like, and I think this is like where that account manager thing happens too, but like just this idea of like avoiding kind of blame,
Hmm.
um, where we're like, okay, this happened. You said you were going to be able to achieve these things, and we're not seeing those results.
Hmm.
And instead of like showing up and saying, you're right, we said that, here are the results that we're getting, and here is kind of why we see that happening. Here is the insight that we're getting from that. Here's what we're learning about this. Instead of like saying that, it's more of a like, oh, well, let me go talk to the SEO team. It's like this kind of avoiding blame.
Hmm.
I feel like when you have this high degree of transparency and communication, you have to like get into what we talk about all the time on this podcast, which is like that shared mindset around learning. Um, and so I think what we're able to do is by instilling that kind of shared mindset, we don't have to avoid blame. We understand that there is kind of knowledge and data even in failed campaigns. Like, we can learn something from those
Hmm.
things. And so like kind of flipping that on its head, instead of trying to avoid things by just clearly saying, yeah, we recommended this, and guess what? We've tried it and it isn't working, and here's what we learned about it. And that could be a learning about the product or service. It could be a learning about how the competition has changed. It could be a learning about the how platforms or ads are changing, right? So there's a lot of things that you can learn. I always say there's like data and failure.
Hmm.
And so instead of avoiding that blame, like owning it and then learning from it.
Yeah. Well, these were all great points. And again, we're looking forward to the next couple of episodes that's
Yeah.
coming up. episode, I believe 8 and 9, should have special guests on there. So you won't be seeing just me and Josh here in the near future, but for a good reason. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for talking about all the things that's just been frustrating in our industry.
Yeah.
And thank you all for tuning in and appreciate the time. And hopefully you found this insightful. See ya.